The flashlight is cutting through total darkness. The camera shaking a little. You can hear breathing. Footsteps are crunching on broken glass and old wooden floors. The viewer has no idea where they are or what is happening. That confusion is the point. It pulls them in before they even realize it. Then one line, said quietly, almost like the narrator is talking to themselves. The last person who lived here walked out in 1984, and nobody ever came back. No dramatic music after that line, no big pause, just silence. The flashlight catches dust floating in the air. The building is completely still. That moment of silence hits harder than any sound effect ever could. Then cut to a wide shot of the whole town in daylight. The contrast is shocking. What looked dark and terrifying a second ago now looks almost peaceful in a sad way. Roads cracked open with weeds growing through them. Old storefronts still standing, but completely hollow inside. Rusted signs still bolted to walls with letters so faded you can barely read them. Trees growing through broken rooftops. The whole place looks like nature is slowly taking it back 1 inch at a time. Do not talk over that wide shot right away. Let it sit for 5 full seconds. Let the audience look at it and feel it. Because what they are looking at was once a real town. Real people built those buildings. Real families lived on those streets. And now it looks like the earth is quietly swallowing it whole. When the narration comes back, keep it calm and honest. Something like this. I spent 8 months researching this place before I finally went in. Every time I thought I understood what happened here, I found something that did not fit the story. I kept thinking that if I could just get inside, everything would make sense. I was wrong. Getting inside did not give me answers. It gave me better questions. That line changes everything. The viewer came in thinking this was just an urban exploration video, someone sneaking into a creepy abandoned place for fun. But now it sounds like an investigation. Something here is off. The narrator already knows it, and now the viewer has to know what it is. End the hook on one simple close-up image. A child's handprint in the dust on a windowsill. A coffee mug still sitting on a kitchen counter. A clock stopped at a specific time. Something small and ordinary that feels human. Do not explain it. Do not say anything about it. Just show it for a moment, and then move on. The hook works on 3 levels at the same time. The first level is physical, darkness and movement and sound that creates instant tension. The second level is mental, a 40-year mystery with details that do not match the official story. The third level is emotional. These were real people, and whatever happened to them was never properly explained. All 3 of those feelings need to land inside the first 60 seconds, because that is the window where the viewer decides if they're staying for the whole video or clicking away. This is not a ghost town from a history book. This is not some famous abandoned place that travel bloggers have already covered 100 times. This is a real town with a real name, sitting on a real map that most people have driven past their entire lives without ever knowing it existed. No tourist signs pointing toward it, no Wikipedia article with a long, detailed history, just a place that was once full of life and then suddenly was not, and the rest of the world just moved on and forgot it was ever there. The narrator makes this personal from the start. This was not a planned content trip. This started as a small piece of research that kept growing the more it was pulled on. A name mentioned in an old local newspaper archive, then a reference in a county record that did not quite line up with the public story, then a photograph found online with no clear source showing a street that looked inhabited far more recently than the official timeline said it should. One thing kept leading to another, and 8 months later, here we are, standing outside a fence with a no trespassing sign that looks like it has not been touched in years.
Getting inside was not simple. The town is technically on private land. There are fences and there are warnings and there are real reasons why people are not supposed to be here. Some of those reasons are legal. Some of those reasons, as it turns out, go a little deeper than just keeping trespassers out. The narrator does not pretend this was casual or consequence-free. The decision to go in was made carefully, and the risks were understood going in. Now here is the part that needs to be said right at the start so the viewer understands what kind of video this actually is. By the time the exploration was over, something had been found inside one of the buildings in this town. Something that had no clean explanation. Something that did not match the story that has been told about this place for 40 years. The crew went quiet when it was found. Not the kind of quiet that gets performed for a camera. The kind of quiet that happens when something shifts in your understanding of a situation and you need a moment to catch up with what you are looking at. What that thing was will be shown later in the video. Everything found leading up to it matters for understanding why it hit the way it did. So the video is going to go through this place in order, the way the exploration actually happened, because the full weight of that discovery only makes sense if the whole story is built first. Skip ahead if you want, but the moment will land a lot harder with the full context behind it. That is the promise of this video, and it is going to be kept. No bait, no fake build-up to a nothing reveal. Something real was found in this town, and by the end of this video, the viewer is going to see exactly what it was and understand exactly why it matters. Right now, though, the story starts the same way the exploration started. Standing at the edge of town in the early morning dark, looking at a place that the world decided to forget, trying to understand why. Let's talk about what this town actually was before it became what it is now. Because it is easy to look at a place like this, all broken windows and collapsed roofs and overgrown streets, and forget that it was not always like this. There was a time when this town was completely normal, ordinary in the best possible way, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where kids walked to school in the morning and came home for dinner and knew every neighbor on every street by name. The town had everything a small community needs. There was a main street with a diner where people ate breakfast before work. There was a post office where the same person sorted mail for 20 years. There was a church that filled up on Sunday mornings. There was a school with a playground and a gymnasium and a little library with paperback books that got passed around so many times the covers fell off. There was a hardware store, a pharmacy, a barber. Normal things, human things, the kind of details that are easy to overlook until they are gone and you are standing in the empty shell of where they used to be. If old photographs of this town are shown right here, look at the faces. These are not historical figures. These are just regular people living regular lives in a place they believed was permanent. That is the part that makes what happened next so hard to sit with. Because what happened did not happen slowly. That is the thing people get wrong when they imagine a town being abandoned. They picture it as a gradual thing, people drifting away over years, buildings slowly emptying out as the economy shifts or the jobs disappear. That is not what happened here. What happened here was fast. The kind of fast that does not give people time to think clearly or pack properly or say goodbye to the place the right way. People left furniture behind, not because they did not want it, but because they did not have time or space, or maybe they still believed they were coming back for it. Clothes are still hanging in closets in some of these houses. There are kitchens where the dishes were washed and stacked and never touched again. One house that was explored still had a child's school bag hanging on a hook by the front door, homework inside it, never turned in. The deadline, 40 years past now. The official reason given for the abandonment depends on which record you look at. The version most people have heard involves either an environmental issue or a government decision about the land, something that made the area unsafe or unusable for residents. The town was cleared out, and the residents were relocated, and that was supposed to be the end of the story. The land was fenced off, no trespassing signs went up, and slowly the town just disappeared from public conversation the way these places always do. Right now, the town sits behind fencing with posted warnings around the perimeter. Parts of it appear to be monitored, though the equipment seen during the approach looked old, and it was unclear how active any of it actually is. Legally, being here is trespassing. That is not being hidden or made to sound more adventurous than it is. It is a real legal risk, and it was treated seriously. The decision to go in was not made for the sake of making a more exciting video. It was made because 8 months of research had produced a version of events that did not match the official story in ways that felt important, and the only way to get closer to the truth was to see the place in person. Sometimes the only real record left of what happened somewhere is the place itself. The crew arrived at the edge of town before the sun came up. That was intentional. Less chance of being seen, better chance of getting in and out without any issues. But there was another reason too, one that only made sense once the approach actually started. There is something about seeing a place like this in that early pre-sunrise darkness that strips away any romanticism about what urban exploration is supposed to feel like. There is no cool factor at 4 in the morning when you are walking toward a town that has been completely empty for 40 years, and the only sound is the wind moving through dead trees. The road leading in was the first sign that this crossing was not going to feel normal. The asphalt was still there, but barely. Cracks running in every direction, with thick weeds pushing up through them, some of them knee-high, growing right out of the middle of what used to be a road that cars drove on every single day. The yellow center line was still faintly visible in certain spots, which somehow made it worse. A painted line from decades ago still trying to do its job on a road that no longer leads anywhere anyone is going. Then the sign appeared in the flashlight beam, and everything got quieter in the way that has nothing to do with actual sound. A metal road sign, the kind that used to mark every small town entrance in America, still standing on its post, still readable. The town's name in faded lettering, rusted around the edges, tilted maybe 10 degrees to the left, but still there, still marking the entrance to a place that officially no longer exists as a community. Standing in front of that sign for a moment before moving past it, that detail hit harder than expected. Someone made that sign. Someone installed it, and it has been standing here every single day for 40 years with no one left to drive past it. Moving into the main street, the first thing that registers is not what is broken, it is what is intact. That is the thing nobody tells you about places like this. The decay is there, absolutely. Roofs collapsed, windows gone, walls leaning at wrong angles. But underneath the decay, the structure of ordinary life is still completely visible, and that is what gets under your skin. The general store is still stocked. That is not an exaggeration. The shelves inside still have merchandise on them. Canned goods with labels so faded the brand names are gone, but the shapes still recognizable. Price tags on certain items, handwritten on small white stickers, numbers that belong to a different economic era entirely. The glass on the front counter is cracked down the middle, but the counter is still there. The register is still there. Everything is right where it was left on whatever the last day of business was, just 40 years older and completely untouched. The barber shop next door stopped time even more completely. The chair is still facing the mirror. The mirror is clouded and spotted with age, but still hanging on the wall. A small shelf below it still has bottles on it, the liquid inside them long evaporated, leaving dark rings at the bottom of the glass. A striped pole outside, color mostly gone now, still attached to the wall. This was someone's livelihood. Someone came here every morning and unlocked that door and cut hair and talked to people all day and went home and came back the next morning. And then one day they did not come back, and no one ever came back, and the chair has been facing that mirror ever since.
What is completely absent is harder to describe but impossible to ignore. There are no animals, no birds. Most abandoned places, even heavily decayed ones, are full of wildlife. Pigeons in the rafters, rats in the walls, something living in every corner. This town has none of that. The silence here is not the comfortable silence of an empty field or a quiet morning. It is a specific kind of silence that presses in from all sides and does not feel natural. The kind of silence that makes you want to talk just to prove that sound still works here. Several times during the walk down that main street, the feeling hit that something was watching, which is easy to dismiss as nerves in a spooky location, until it keeps happening and does not go away. After the main street, the decision was made to move into the residential area. The side streets running off the main road, the ones where people actually lived, where the real texture of this town exists. If the main street shows you what the town looked like from the outside, the houses show you who actually lived here. And that distinction matters more than expected once you start walking through them. The first house entered was chosen almost randomly. It was close to the street. The front door was visible from the road, and it looked structurally stable enough to enter safely. The door opened with almost no resistance, not a dramatic creak, not a hard shove, just a gentle push, and it swung inward like it had been unlocked and waiting. That small detail felt wrong in a way that is hard to articulate. A door that has been closed for 40 years should fight back a little. This one did not. Inside, the first thing seen was a child's drawing pinned to the wall of the front hallway. Crayon on white paper, the paper yellowed and curling at the corners, but still attached to the wall by a single pushpin. A house, a tree, two figures standing outside. The kind of drawing every kid makes at some point. Labeled at the bottom in uneven handwriting the way young children write when they are still learning how letters work. Standing in front of that drawing for longer than planned because it made the whole thing suddenly very real in a way that the empty storefronts on the main street had not quite managed. Moving through the house, more details started building on each other. A calendar on the kitchen wall stopped on a specific month. Not torn down, not fallen, just stopped. The last month anyone in this house needed to know what day it was. A rotary phone on a side table in the living room with a small notepad beside it. A name and a phone number written in faded ink, in the kind of handwriting that suggests an older person, careful and deliberate. Someone wrote that number down because they needed to remember it. They never called it again. But here is where the exploration started to shift for the first time, because looking around this house carefully, something does not match the story of a sudden rushed evacuation. The bed in the main bedroom is made, properly made, pillows straight, blanket pulled up and tucked. The dishes in the kitchen are washed and stacked neatly in the drying rack beside the sink. The shoes by the front door are paired and placed side by side. This is not what a house looks like when a family grabbed what they could and left in a panic. This is what a house looks like when someone cleaned up before they walked out, like they were expecting company, or like they were trying to leave things in order before something they already knew was coming. That question sat in the air for the rest of the time spent in that house. Why does this feel arranged rather than abandoned? Why does it feel like someone made decisions about how to leave rather than just leaving? Then came the detail that moved this from a question into something more uncomfortable. On the kitchen counter, partially tucked under the edge of a ceramic fruit bowl, a receipt. The paper fragile and spotted with age but still readable under close examination. The date on that receipt is not from 1984. It is not from anywhere near the official evacuation timeline. The year printed on that receipt puts someone in this kitchen considerably after the town was supposed to be completely empty.
after the fences went up, after the no trespassing signs were posted, after the official record says no one was here anymore. That one small piece of paper changes the entire shape of the story. It does not answer anything, it opens something. Because if someone was here after the evacuation, the obvious questions follow immediately. Who was it? What were they doing here? Did anyone know? And most importantly, what does that mean about the version of events that has been told about this place for the last 40 years?
Every town has one building that matters more than the others. Not the biggest, but the one that held the most weight for the people who lived there. The one where important decisions got made. In this town, that building was toward the far end of the main street, set back slightly from the road, larger than everything around it. A community hall by appearance, but something about its construction always looked slightly off in the old photographs found during research. Slightly too solid, slightly too deliberately built for a town of this size. Getting inside took longer than the houses did. The main doors were chained, but the chain was old enough that it gave way without much effort. The inside opened into a large central room with a high ceiling, metal folding chairs still stacked against one wall, a low wooden stage at the far end. Normal enough on the surface. But the side rooms off the main hall are where the building started to feel like something different from what it presented itself as. The first side room was an office, filing cabinets still standing, most of them empty. But one cabinet in the corner was still closed, and the contents inside were partially intact. Not decidedly classified files, just administrative records, meeting minutes, correspondence. Except reading through some of those pages, the language used is not the language of a normal small-town organization. Certain documents reference oversight from outside the town in a way that implies this community was being monitored and managed rather than simply existing on its own terms. References to reporting requirements, references to approvals needed from parties never named directly. Taken together, they start painting a picture of a town that was not entirely its own. The second room off the main hall was locked with a newer lock. That detail mattered immediately. Everything else in this building aged together, same decay, same timeline. But this lock was different, cleaner, a different era of hardware on a very old door. Someone came back to this specific room after the evacuation and locked it deliberately. Whatever is inside was important enough that someone made a specific trip back to secure it after the town was already empty. The room was not entered. The lock held, and forcing it was not worth the risk. But standing outside that door was the moment the atmosphere of the entire exploration changed. The discomfort was no longer just nerves or the natural strangeness of an abandoned place. It was the specific feeling of realizing you are not in a forgotten place. You are in a place where someone made active decisions about what to hide and what to leave behind. Forgotten and hidden are two very different things, and this town was starting to feel much more like the second one. There was a building near the back of the residential area that almost got skipped entirely. It was smaller than the others, set slightly apart from the surrounding houses. No signage on it, no obvious indication of what it had been used for. The kind of structure that does not demand attention. But something about it caught the eye long enough to stop walking and look at it properly. And once it was looked at properly, the difference became clear immediately. Every other building in this town was closed, doors shut, windows dark, the natural result of people leaving and time passing. This building was sealed. That is a different thing entirely. The boards across the entrance were not on the inside, they were on the outside. Someone stood outside this building after it was already empty and deliberately closed it off from the outside. That is not how you board up your own property before leaving. That is how you make sure no one gets into something after you are gone. Getting the boards loose took time. They were old, but they had been put up with more care than necessary for a building in a town that was supposedly never going to be visited again. Once inside, the first thing noticed was that the air felt different. Every other building in this town had that same heavy, damp smell of decades of neglect. This room smelled stale but drier, more contained, like whatever was inside it had been sitting undisturbed in a more deliberate way than simple abandonment. What was found inside does not have a clean, simple explanation, and it is not going to be presented as one. There were materials in that room that did not belong to the era this town was abandoned in. Equipment and supplies with manufacturing dates that came after the official evacuation. Not decades after, but enough years after to make the timeline completely impossible if the official story is taken at face value. Someone was using this building after the town was empty, not passing through, using it, regularly enough to bring supplies and equipment and store them here in an organized way. The crew went quiet when this became clear. Not the kind of quiet that gets performed for a camera because something looks spooky. The kind of quiet that happens when a situation moves from strange to something that requires a moment to actually process. Nobody said anything for almost a full minute. The camera kept running because that is the job, but nobody spoke because there was genuinely nothing to say yet. Sometimes the most honest thing a person can do on camera is let the silence show rather than fill it with words that have not been thought through yet. What this discovery means for the larger story of this town is something that gets addressed fully in the next part of the video. But standing in that room, in that silence, the one thing that was clear to everyone present was this. The version of this town that the public has been given for 40 years, the clean, simple story of an unfortunate community that had to be relocated and left behind, has a serious problem. And that problem has a room. And that room was just found. Now it is time to put everything together. The made bed in the evacuated house, the receipt dated after the town was supposed to be empty, the documents in the community hall referencing outside oversight and unnamed approvals, the sealed room with equipment that should not exist in a town abandoned 40 years ago. Individually, each of these things could be explained away. Together, they are telling a story that is significantly different from the official one. The public version of what happened to this town is straightforward. An environmental issue or government decision made the area unsuitable for residents. People were relocated, the town was closed off. End of story. But that version has never fully accounted for certain things that were discoverable through research before this trip even started. Local county records that reference the town in present tense years after the supposed evacuation. A regional newspaper archive with a brief unexplained mention of activity in the area in the early 1990s that was never followed up on. 2 former residents tracked down and spoken to before this trip who both said the same thing independently of each other, that they were told very little about why they were leaving and even less about what would happen to the town afterward. One of them said directly that she always felt the explanation given to residents was the minimum amount of information required to get people to leave without asking too many questions. That line stayed with me. The minimum amount of information required to get people to leave without asking too many questions. Because that is not how you talk about a straightforward environmental relocation. That is how you talk about a managed situation where controlling the narrative was part of the plan. What the evidence suggests, and this is being stated carefully because the goal is not to overreach beyond what can actually be supported, is that this town served a secondary purpose beyond just being a community. That certain parties with certain interests had a specific reason for wanting this location, and that the evacuation of residents, while possibly necessary on some level, was also convenient in ways that went beyond public safety. and that after the residents left, the town did not simply sit untouched the way the official story implies. It continued to be used in some capacity for some period of time by people who had access and reason to be there that the general public was never told about. This town is not a unique case. There are documented examples across the United States of small communities that were displaced under official explanations that later turned out to be incomplete or misleading. The pattern is consistent enough that researchers who study this specific history have a framework for recognizing it. This town fits that framework closely enough to be worth serious attention. The people who lived here deserved a real explanation. Their furniture is still in those houses. Their children's drawings are still on those walls. Their lives were interrupted and relocated, and they were given the minimum amount of information required to make them go quietly. 40 years later, the town is still sealed and still protected by no trespassing signs, and the full story of what it was and what it was used for has still never been told publicly. That is not an accident. That is a choice that someone keeps making every single year that passes without accountability. Before this video ends, there is one question that needs to be asked directly. If you found out that the official reason given for something that affected your life and your community was incomplete, carefully shaped to leave out the parts that would make people ask harder questions, what would you do with that information? Would you push back and try to find the full story? Or would you decide that 40 years have passed and the truth at this point would only cause more pain than it would solve?
There is no clean answer to that. One of the former residents spoken to before this trip said something that has been thought about many times since. She said the hardest part was not what happened. It was never being given the chance to understand why. That the not knowing was its own kind of loss that never fully healed the way the other losses eventually did. That is what these places actually cost the people they happen to. Not just the houses and the streets and the physical community, the understanding, the closure, the basic respect of being told the truth about your own life. Now here is where the audience comes in. This town was found partly because someone in the comments of a previous video mentioned a location near where they lived that had disappeared from maps without a clear explanation. So the question being asked right now is genuine. Do you know of a place like this? A town, a neighborhood, somewhere that went quiet in a way that never fully made sense? Leave it in the comments. Every location mentioned gets looked at seriously, and several of them are already being researched for future videos.